everybody. Good morning. I'm so glad you guys are here. Let's get started. If you're coming in and you didn't submit a question, just kind of put it in the chat and I will see that. Otherwise, I have some things that I'm going to answer here. So it's nice to see everyone today. I'm glad you guys are here. Okay. So I'm going to start off with, have you experienced the Fab Five? Okay. This is what I like to call them. The Fab Five are a birth or death, a wedding or divorce, a housing change, a job change, or medical change. Those are what I call the Fab Five. The reason why I bring this up today is because these are things that all of us experience. All of us. No one is exempt from these few things that is basically called life. And so when we have these experiences, it creates like depression, anxiety, a little stress. And so we have to manage these five areas in our life all the time. When they happen pretty close together, so like say 1 month you're having this going on, and then another month you have something else, but the closer they are together, the harder it is to just manage them. We figure out kind of how to manage them as they come. But when they are far apart and you have months and years before any of these things take place, it makes it easier to manage what is happening. So just keep that in mind. The reason why I bring this up today is because we are going to talk about self love and self care. So, what is self love? Well, it's really just the one's regard for your well being. Plain and simple. Self love is one's regard for your well being. Now, why is that related to self care? One, because the two terms are often interchangeable, and a lot of people kind of use both terms. But really, the difference is that self care is really just the vehicle that we use to get to self love. So basically, it's the things that we're doing to get to self love. So you got to kind of have both. Yes, they're interchangeable, but you got to have both. Okay. So, why is this important to just the Fab Five and our overall well being? Well, because if we're working towards self care and self love, you kind of have to know where you live. And this is the other piece that I want to bring in. So, use what I call a mood scale. So, let me explain kind of what that is because I want you to start tracking where you are, because when you're experiencing your Fab Five, you're going to experience each of those differently. And so you're going to be on different places on your mood scale. And so you kind of have to know where you generally live from day to day. Okay. So on one end of the scale, you have a 10. This would be feeling anxious, manic, you know, erratic behavior, maybe unsavory behavior, spending too much, you're very euphoric, you're just think over the top. On the other skin of the scale, you have a 0. This is where you're feeling sad, very down. Often you have feelings or thoughts of not wanting to be alive or be unalive. And then so you're just in this very dark place. In the middle, 4, 5, 6, somewhere in there, this is our happy, content kind of place, right? This is our place where we can pretty much live life and engage in everyday life all the time, and we're okay. We may not be ecstatic, but we can function. Now, what happens is when our self-care and our self-love is not at its best, and I'm not saying 100%, but when it's not at its best, we typically are not living in that 4, 5, 6 range. We are on one end or the other. We're somewhere not in there. I'm going to gather and say you're probably more on the lower end. Yes, you can still function with depression. You can still go to work every day. You can still put a smile on your face every day. But yet, this is part of what's happening when you're not in that self love place. So, what does all this have to do with hormone health? Okay, let me explain. So, now that we know what we're doing to get to self love and we know where we live on that scale, what is happening is when we are having an emotional, stressful response. Now, this is normal. Normally, we should be going up and down when we have a stressful response. The thing happens, we have a stressful response, we should come back down. What often happens is that we'll go up and we stay up and we never come down, and then that becomes chronic stress. And that's something we can talk about later on. But generally, we should go up and come down. When we are going up and coming down, when we go up, we have cortisol that is being basically dumped into our body to kind of help us cope and handle. But what happens in that process is that our whole nervous system kind of shuts down and it kind of goes offline. And this is why we can't make executive decisions. We can't function correctly. We have trouble just moving about our daily life because we are in this state of kind of unawareness, is maybe a good place to put that. And so now we have these cortisol dumps. And remember, cortisol is that one of the hormones that we have to manage through our healing journey, because when it is out of whack, it is putting other hormones out of whack at the same time. So if we're having this stress response and we're having this cortisol dump and you never come down from the stress response, how are you going to get rid of the cortisol? You don't. It can take up to 24 hours for your body to come back online from this cortisol dump and being shut down. And if you're always up, it never shuts back on. It never comes back on. It's always just off, which is why you're seeing probably a lot of issues or a lot of problems. So I encourage you to look at what is bringing stress in your life. What are the things that are causing maybe extra or more than the Fab Five stress in your life? And even the Fab Five can create these issues too, because if you're dealing with long term, more chronic stress, such as, like, say, this medical thing, you got recently diagnosed with something, and now you have to go to all these treatments and do all these things, and this anxiety, and just all these things are happening that is creating that stress response that you have, which could be a little bit more chronic. So think about what are things that are stressing you at the moment or have been over time, and let's work on putting some self-care activities in place to manage where you are so that we can balance our hormones a little bit better. Okay, so remember that self care is the vehicle to what we need in order to get to self love. Now, here are just a few basic strategies or things you can do to kind of help make sure you get it in until you get it, just get it done. So, the first one to just getting it in is basically block it on your schedule. If you either put it on your schedule as something you consistently do, and it will help with productivity and burnout and things like that. But it's something you consistently do if it's on your schedule. However, if you're something like me, well, it's still technically in my schedule, but I intentionally put self care activities in my routines. So in the morning, in the evening, I have specific activities that I do, which invoke self care, self love for me, that I do every single day, every day. And in that every day, that is going to help manage just generally overall. So that's the thing about self putting it in your schedule. Another one to kind of make it easy is clutter. Now, clutter in your house, clutter in your car, clutter in the fridge, just clutter. So I'm going to encourage you to declutter because the way your physical environment looks is how your internal brain is. Like it's a representation of what's happening upstairs. And so if your environment looks cluttered and it's dirty and you're just like having all these issues at home and it's not comfortable, it's not easy, it's not pleasant for you, get rid of the clutter and find a way to clean the house. There are a ton of resources. If you have questions about that, you can ask me because I have figured out, I think, in many ways on how to make that look. One of my favorite people to follow that does this pretty well is actually two. There's the Fly Lady, and then there's the Clean Mama. Those are my two favorites if you're having some issues on kind of managing the house. But overall, getting rid of the clutter so that your space can reflect like what your mind or where your mind should be is the first step. Another thing that you can do is do just a caring act, a selfish act for someone else. What this does is that you are taking the focus off yourself for a minute and you're giving it to someone else. And when you do that, you are effectively boosting your own like serotonin, dopamine, and whatever we got, the neurotransmitters in our brain. It's helping you feel better, essentially. And so that is one way of creating self care or self love is by doing something selfish for someone else. Now, there is a study out there, I think it was done in 2010, maybe 2015, but it says that people who did like caring, selfless acts, who volunteered and did things for other people, had a 10-year extension on their lifespan. Now, who doesn't want to live for 10 years? Like, come on now. And so, compared to the people that didn't, the people that didn't do these things would have a shorter lifespan versus those that did. And they had, again, 10 years. So, I would suggest that maybe your acts of love to others so that you can just expand your own life. So, I wanted to just kind of bring this back full circle. You know, we all experience the Fab Five. You gotta have to know where you live on that mood scale in order to know, like, are things good or bad in your life? Or I wouldn't even say good or bad. I would just say, you know, are things pleasant and content and happy in your life versus not? And knowing the mood scale is important for that. But ultimately, if we are trying to achieve self love every day, then through self care, that's the ultimate goal because that's what's going to help us maintain. That's what's going to help us maintain the stress level low and make sure that when we do have our stressful responses, we go up and we come back down. So I hope y'all found today helpful and that you got something out of it. What I want you to do is if you haven't done the 5 day or 7 day video series, I want you to do that because there's a little bit more detail explaining things you need for just general womb health or mental and a little mental health kind of added in there, but it's the starting point. If you need more support, why don't you make sure you sign up for a call with me and we can talk about that? I also have the opening of the goddess retreat or the goddess detox that is open. That is that 12-week coaching program that is open. And so I would love for you to come and join with me over there and we will go in detail about where how you get to greater womb health. So I hope y'all have an amazing day, and I will talk with you soon. Bye.